everyone. Welcome to another Underrated Film Saturday. I apologize that I had to have a significant delay of videos. Unfortunately, I was busy leading all the way up to the new year and a little bit after the new year. So I am going to try to catch myself up to today. But yeah, basically, without further ado, let me address what I wanted to really talk about for this Underrated Film Saturday, and one that actually came out relatively recently, has been getting a lot of praise, I think, critically, um, especially among the sort of academy or the Hollywood elite, as I like to call them. But it's not really, I think, really well known among probably the more general uh, moviegoer populace, only because there has been a huge craze, at least for the time being, the Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, which I will be addressing for the random talk, since that is a particular film that came out in 2015 that was very significant and got a lot of media attention, and I kind of wanted to address my thoughts about that particular film. But for this underrated film, we're going to be addressing, as you probably can tell by the title as well as thumbnail, The Hateful Eight, which is a Quentin Tarantino movie. Now, this is an example of the sort of Quentin Tarantino that I personally prefer, only because I think there is a little bit of more of an originality here as opposed to a lot of his other material that has come out over the years, at least recently. And this is technically a winter-related film and a Western to nonetheless, which is actually something that you don't see often within Western films. Usually, Western films take place in the desert where it's completely dry and warm, and there is literally no signs of snow or any winter weather anywhere, unless there's maybe certain brief moments within films where they will show a scene of snow, but rarely do you see it within Western films. And it's interesting that this primarily takes place within the wintertime, which is also significantly related to this period of which we are in still currently, which is winter. And it's also a rather interesting Tarantino film because, unlike a lot of the other films that have come out that have been more revenge stories, this is designed to be more of a mystery story, and in the sense also a sort of bounty hunter kind of story as well. So the lines are kind of, I guess you could say, blurred between really who's the good guys and who are the bad guys, even though there's a clear indication later on as to who the good guys and the bad guys are. But basically, the plot involves a bounty hunter played by Kurt Russell, who refers to himself as John the Hangman. And basically, he is taking his prisoner slash fugitive off to a town where she is going to be executed. And yeah, they actually gave, at least in this case, the villain, or at least one of the main villains' titles to a female as opposed to the male, which is something it's something that you see sometimes in Quentin Tarantino movies, but I don't think you see it too often in filmmaking, at least nowadays, at least in this way, to where she is a prisoner. And basically, what ends up happening is Kurt Russell's character ends up running into another bounty hunter, but basically played by none other than Samuel L. Jackson. And they're basically tied together by sort of running into each other and then sort of seeking shelter, since there is a huge storm coming. And they do really bring out sort of the grit and what you would expect people during the time period would have to be going through. So that's also something that I think works well to this particular film's advantage. And also, they encounter a young guy who claims to be the sheriff of the town that, or the new up and coming sheriff of the town that John the Hangman, Kurt Russell's character, is trying to uh, go to, basically, that specific town. And obviously, Kurt Russell doesn't believe him throughout. Uh, but it's once they get to that stopping point of where they're seeking shelter is really when the plot begins, because you ultimately end up being revealed certain parts of how certain characters are somehow related to another, and it sort of weaves intricately the plot. And again, that is what I think Tarantino does really well of, and I think where he actually does really well of here is he sets up a plot. And there's not a huge amount of elaborateness to this whole setup. I mean, it's pretty old school standard filmmaking. It's not like a spectacle like Star Wars or some other films that we see more so coming out nowadays, where there's a lot of different places that the characters go to, and there's a lot of different uh, things that they run into. Here, it's just plain and straightforward. And I think that also works well to the film's advantage. And again, I'm sure there are people that will disagree and say, well, why, I could have done that, I could have just set it up this way. And I understand that argument, but at the same time, I still feel that uh, the overall presentation of it is well constructed as far as a plot is concerned. And obviously, you get the quirky violence that you come to expect from Quentin Tarantino movies. So, again, this is very his style. So, if you do not in particular care for his style of filmmaking, this will not appeal to you in the slightest. But basically, the stop that they have is a cabin, and then eventually everything gets sort of revealed to you from there. And I don't really want to go into what really happens because that's really giving away the story. And really, it's the story that sells this particular film. And again, the characters do stand out in their own way, like Kurt Russell's character and Samuel L. Jackson. It's all good, solid performances. But I think overall, when you look at this film as to what makes it, I think, rather unique and interesting to watch is the plot and just seeing how Quentin Tarantino sets up the story, because the story is really what I think highlights a lot of highlights a lot of what he's good at least what I feel he's more strong at. But uh, and obviously, like I mentioned before, this did come out roughly, I think, a week after the Star Wars film. So I think that obviously a lot of the films that are going to be coming out and have been sort of coming out and have been advertised are not really getting as much of a thought, considering the fact that Star Wars is the big blockbuster of this year. And I could see that this film would get a little bit pushed under the bus as a result. Um, and also because some people might think that there is a lack of um, out of the box thinking as far as Tarantino films are concerned, considering the fact that it is a western, it's a lot like other films that he's made. But I think the way in which he executes this film is actually way more interesting and engaging and unique, compared to something like Django Unchained, which is just a typical revenge story that we've seen time and time again. And here it is not a kind of really revengey story. It's just a sort of mystery, and is and basically ties certain things together in a way that you kind of see that there's a lack of focus, but at the same time, that lack of focus makes the movie all the more interesting. So again, it's I think going back to Tarantino's kinds of roots to where he was really good at least, as far as executing a plot and using the characters and the scenery to try to established story. So I think overall this particular Western film really does work. And it is a little bit hokey at times. I kind of did feel uncomfortable at certain points. But despite that, I still felt that its overall presentation worked to the film's advantage. So if you've not seen this particular film or haven't really heard of it, I would definitely recommend it. I'm sure though there's other people who may not feel this is really up to snuff as to what they like as far as filmmaking is concerned. But I think still this one holds up, and I think deserves a certain amount of praise, at least when it comes around this time of year, when we're getting closer and closer to the sort of the Oscars and the um, Golden Globes. So I think that's though really ultimately all I can say though about this film without really giving anything away. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. I should be caught up hopefully by the end of today. Um, I do need to kind of get my head around as to what exactly I want to present for all of the videos, because it has been some time for me to, it has at least taken some time for me to kind of catch up and figure out, okay, what I'm going to talk about in this video and yada, yada, yada. So thank you anyway, though, for watching. I hope you all had a wonderful new year. I know that I did, and I thought it was a great and fun and grandiose time. But hopefully I'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.